is the strategy room for Tuesday, April 18th. I am your air traffic controller for the evening, Reed Galen. I am joined once again by the one, the only, the Rick Wilson. Rick, welcome.
Reed, how are you?
Also, legendary Democratic strategist and all-around good guy, just back from the Sunshine State. He escaped somehow. Joe Trippi. Joe, welcome.
Great to be with you guys.
And coming to us from a
I
secret
can't ever seem to escape this fucking place.
No, you're a Florida man. You're a seventh generation Florida man. Your
I am
tentacles are
that
deep.
creature.
Yeah, and coming to us from a secret, undisclosed location, the one and the only Stuart Stevens. Stu, welcome back.
Good to be here, brother.
All right, guys. Well, since this is since the ink on Jim Rutenberg's story in the New York Times, digitally anyway, isn't even dry, today, much to the surprise, I think, of most people, Dominion Voting Systems settled its 2-year complaint against Fox News and Fox Corp for $787 million. They had originally asked for $1.6 billion plus an on-air apology. They did it for less than half of what they originally asked for. And as Rutenberg just reported right before we went on air, no on-air apology will be required. As you can imagine, the social media is where you would expect it to be. I am frankly disappointed, and I'm not going to lie about my disappointment. As I said before we went on air, the baddest of the bad guys always seem to get away with it. Logan Roy might have died on television, but he's alive and well in New York City. Rick, what are we doing here?
Look, I mean, Reed, here's the thing. First off, I will say this. There are two rays of hope, and I'm normally not Mr. Sunshine. Two things here that I think are to the good. The first is that $787 million is still real money. That hurts. That hurts them a lot. That is not an easy thing to do. And it also cements sort of the end of Rupert's shenanigans at his own company. There will be more internal controls now at some level. The host will still play fuck around, but this is a painful settlement regardless. I would have preferred to see Sean Hannity walk through the streets and beaten with reeds, but we're not going to get that. The second thing that is to the good here is that Smartmatic now knows the same kind of suit, same basic allegations. Smartmatic now knows that either Fox is going to have to pay a comparable amount of money again or go to court. They now know that Fox does not want to take this to court. They do not want to have this in front of a jury ever. They do not want to have to drag Rupert and the rest of these guys in front of the cameras and the jurors. I would have liked a different outcome. It is still a colossal financial settlement. And there's an admission in those dollars that is not as emotionally satisfying. But right now, there are some really, really pissed off people at News Corp.
So, Joe, to Rick's point, remember that we should remind everybody not to get too boring about the financing of cable news, but Fox doesn't really make its money on advertising. It makes its money on what they call carriage fees, which is all the money, if you still have a cable contract, that you pay to the cable company that they then pay to various channels, right, that you see on your television. And Fox has commanded a premium for a number of years because they have very strong ratings for cable news. They have, their 5 p.m. Eastern show gets 5 million people an afternoon. Millions of people tune into this. So tell us, what your opinion is of this, because it seems like, yes, it will be a financial hit. But again, this is a big company. Yet it is part of News Corp. And again, their finances don't appear to be dependent on Procter and Gamble, right? It's gold and our money.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Rick's right. Smartmatic's out there; they're coming. They know. But one of the things Fox admitted that there were falsehoods in their reporting, and so they put it falsehood. So that already puts them in bad stead with the Smartmatic and the other lawsuits that are coming. There are individuals that are going to be sued out of this. But the one thing I'm starting to wonder about is whether there's a class action lawsuit now. I mean, millions and millions of Americans pay these carriage fees. They don't want Fox. They don't want to be paying for Fox. At the same time, what they were paying for was for Fox to perpetrate a fraud and lies on the American people that put democracy itself, on at risk here, and did great damage to the country, as I think the
Right.
CEO was saying today, of Dominion. I think I'd love to see a class action suit where millions of Americans sign up as part of the class to take Fox on, take him to court, same kind of discovery, all that stuff. And I don't know. There's got to be some trial lawyers out there that might be willing to take that cause on. I'm sure millions of Americans
Ah,
after this would join it.
I'm sure
sorry,
they would. I'm sure
my
they
camera
would.
my camera went haywire. All right, Stuart.
That was
All right,
exciting.
so it was very exciting. So, Stuart, put yourself in, now. We're all jailhouse lawyers, right? I don't think any of us
Yeah,
ever actually went to
yeah.
law
I have no
school.
idea.
So, put yourself in the shoes of Dominion's attorneys and the Dominion of executives.
Yeah, look, it's a huge amount of money, like Rick says. Um, I I don't see how they really almost could turn it down, to be honest. I mean, my dad always said the best lawyers keep their clients out of court.
Right.
It's a sure thing. Something could have gone sideways in that jury. I I think it just we're looking to the legal system to solve a problem that is up to us. And it's an unfair burden on one small little company that makes voting machines. Um, you've got Ron DeSantis out there who's posting on Twitter that he won't. He's against any sort of trans acknowledgement because that would be complicit in a lie. And yet he won't say that the President of the United States was legally elected. So, as most of the Republicans won't. I mean, the big lie is still out there. It's the cornerstone of the Republican Party now. So,
But look, Stuart. I mean, remember going back to the Chicago School of Economics, right, of the '60s
right,
and '70s, right, about shareholder value, right,
Right.
and
yeah,
this is, you got to make the most amount of money for your shareholders, which really skewed, you could say, for the last 40 or so years. How American corporations, maybe corporations overseas, see themselves
yeah,
too, which is not at all. Um, American in nature almost, which is we'll do whatever's best for us. And if it's not great for y'all or great for the country, sorry.
well, it's appropriate now to mention that Resolute Square was formed as a public benefit corporation,
Right.
Yes.
exactly to get out of that box so that the
Hmm.
board doesn't have the obligation to put just monetary um, gains first, however you want to phrase it. There's acknowledging that there's a greater good. Um, Look, I think you're absolutely right. But it's just such a larger sickness in the country that we have failed to come to grips with this cancer of mendacity. So it's the same day. I mean, two things happened today. Clarence Thomas admitted basically that either a guy is on the Supreme Court and can't figure out one form, or he's been lying over the amount of money that he's been getting from Harlan Crow. So,
Right.
I mean, what does that say? I mean, you have a Supreme Court justice. You have two other justices on the court who were put there because McConnell lied. The last three justices certainly deceived the public about their position on Roe, even if legalistically they didn't perjure themselves. So there's this sort of greater evil there, a sort of lost touch with any sense of values afloat that I think is endemic.
So, Rick, I once heard that there's an expression sometimes amongst law enforcement about quote unquote working the gray, right? They don't cross
Right.
the line into illegality, and they don't do everything by the book because sometimes, not speaking for myself, but sometimes you might have to do things that maybe aren't necessarily by the book but get the job done. And what Stuart's talking about is everybody who has some incentive to money, power, authority, whatever, just works the grade. That's where they live now. There is no there. I mean, look, there's very rarely is there an objective good or an objective evil. But you'd like to believe that there's a pretty good idea of what one looks like when you see it.
Sure.
Now, I think to Stuart's point is everybody's willing to live in that nebula, and there's no accountability for doing it.
Well, I mean, look, I think one other thing to loop back on Dominion for 1 second, which actually is kind of relevant to this, and I have not had time to read the entire thing because we were coming on the air. But the judge in the case with Dominion has also appointed a special master to further investigate Fox. Now,
And what does that mean, Rick?
well, a special master is a particular legal construct where
Right.
a guy will be empowered to go in on Fox's dime, by the way,
Right.
and examine the certain other aspects that would have been brought up in this trial. And they have a fairly broad ambit. They've got a fairly broad amount of power. I have not had a chance to read the entire thing. This is one more area I think where the judge felt that the courts would have resolved some things about Fox that were relevant to the public good. I'm very curious how that's going to turn out. But Reed, as for your question about working in the gray and lack of consequence, look, our society evolved in three sort of phases from the late 1960s. There was a sort of end of the responsibility era, and then there was a sort of end of the shame era, and now there's the end of consequences. So as you came out of the 60s, there was a sort of end of like, it's not my responsibility, fuck you, I'm going to go my own way, make my own thing, etc. There were less community and social bonds between people, less cohesion in the social contract. And then it evolved from there into the sort of lack of shame. People weren't hiding it anymore. They're like, fuck you, yeah, I'm going to rip people off if I can get away with it. I'm going to burn down, whatever institution I have to burn down to get to my thing, and I don't care. I don't care about it. And now we're in this era of no consequences, and Trump has been the force that gave people the worst examples in the universe for no consequences. He had a 40-year career of not facing consequences for incredibly shitty actions over and over and over. And now there's an entire, not just a political party dedicated to protecting him, but an entire culture that about 60 or 50 million Americans are fanatically dedicated to protecting him from consequence. And everyone else in the same sort of space is also in that. Once you're post shame, it's easy to be post consequence. Look, Matt Gaetz, if he was a normal human being caught up in a child trafficking and prostitution ring, which he was, even though he didn't get indicted for it, his fingerprints are all over it. In the old era of responsibility and shame, he would have left office. He would have left public life. He would have said, no, I'm done. But now he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit. He's going to run for governor of Florida.
We've got George Santos in office,
right,
too. Right? He just announced his run for re-election.
Yeah.
You've got Paul Gosar right now putting up a member of Congress posting anti-Semitic propaganda, anti-Semitic memes, putting it out under his official congressional letterhead. And you know what's going to happen to him? Not a fucking thing. Kevin McCarthy will not do a thing. He needs every single vote to keep his key to the special bathroom. And
so Joe, let's talk about the Trump aspect of this, because for Trump, he's gonna tout this as a win, right?
Sure.
Because it's first of all, it's somebody else's money. Second of all, if you read the statement carefully, Fox doesn't say they did anything wrong. They say the court found that we had done something wrong, which is a distinction with a difference. And he'll say, see, they couldn't get me.
It's a good point, Reed.
Yeah, no, I think that's the point that they will Fox and Trump will declare this as some kind of victory, play it as a victory.
Sure.
The interesting thing, though, is what is DeSantis and everybody? In other words, every senator should be like get a mic stuck in their face and did Fox lie? I mean, really push them on this and keep the pressure on the entire party and if they come out and defend Fox and Trump, make them keep doing it. I keep going back to what Tim Nichols said, or Tom Nichols, I'm sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
about make them smoke the whole pack. This is something we want everybody to have to smoke the whole pack on the MAGA side, even as they deny it, even as we all know none of this is going to matter. It wouldn't have mattered to have gone to court and been found, gotten $2 billion. The MAGA cult would still not. They don't care about. There, like as Rick says, there are no consequences with them.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, it's funny just to stay on Republican senators for a second. Most of them, septuagenarians, if not octogenarians, who you'd think would walk around with walkers, but as soon as something like this comes up, their feet look like the Roadrunner, scrambling away from
Yeah.
Wile E. Coyote. So, all right. So, Stuart, here we are now, right? So, Smartmatic will be what it will be. Dominion will be what it will be. The gnashing of teeth and renting of clothes will go on for a few days, and then we'll move on to the next thing. But what do you think about the broader thing about the idea here that every time we think maybe we've nailed one of these guys down, they're just slippery as heels and they somehow find their way out?
Yeah, I mean, part of this is the problem of living in a democracy. And, when you study how democracy slide into autocracy, it's always because the other side was able to utilize the tools of being in a free society to
Yeah.
take that freedom away. So, we have this thing called the First Amendment, which it is part of what will be used if we end up in an autocracy, will be used against it. I think that it goes to the need to be vigilant and to call out what is happening. It's something that we've struggled with because to really say what is happening now, it's difficult not to sound alarmist. Mm-hmm. But it's so important to do that. And it's like a pandemic. What you say at the beginning will seem alarmist, and at the end will prove inadequate. But you're so right that it's part of a larger world of as Kellyanne Conway said, alternative facts. And once you accept that, how do you have a civil society if you can't agree on fundamental facts?
And that's what both Ann Applebaum and Tim Snyder, who are very accomplished, both incredible writers and theorists and academics about this stuff, have said that very thing, Stuart, which is one of the key pieces of destroying a democracy, destroying a civil society, is the inability to have a common discussion. Is there a common set of issues? And right now, if you look at the issues that will play on Fox tonight, because this won't play on Fox tonight, right? Then it will be critical race theory. It will be trans. It will be your gas stove. It will be name the inanity, and that's what we'll find tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know if there's a mechanism outside of a society coming to grips with itself to deal with this. I don't think that there's legal consequences for it. I think that what we've realized is that the Republican Party has become complicit in this and essential to this. And that even when you vote for the good Republicans, say you vote for Glenn Youngkin, where does he end up? Standing next to Carrie Lake, whose job every day is to destroy democracy. That's what she wakes up and does every day. And you have to defeat these people. That is the mechanism available to us in our society, is to vote these people out of power.
But Rick, I mean, so continue on Stuart's thought here, because we do this day in and day out. We've been at this now. Well, you've been at this nearly 8 goddamn years, and with the rest of us, for the most part, have been at this for almost 3.5 years as part of the Lincoln Project, without much of a break. But that's okay, because the fight doesn't stop. But it's days like this where, it was Ellie, and if I say his last name wrong, I'm saying Ellie Mistel, Mystal, who said, fuck it, let's go bowling.
Yeah, look, I think the thing today that has disappointed people, and me included, is there's still a vestigial belief in the minds of Americans that when you get even the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world, and Rupert is certainly one of those most powerful people in the world, when you get them on the stand in a court of law, it can be some lawyer who went to a state school and doesn't fly on private jets and doesn't have 12 houses in beautiful parts of the world, but that person becomes the avatar for justice for everyone, asking the questions, holding them to account, probing into their behavior. And the fact that we didn't get that, I think, is something that Americans are legitimately disappointed by. I get why they're unhappy. I really do. I'm not happy myself. I wish it had been a different outcome. Do I like the fact that Rupert has to write a check for $800 million? And by the way, probably also spent another $20 million on legal fees for this thing.
At
At
least,
least.
probably. It was 2 years.
I mean, just some astronomical number. And do I did I want to see the torture? Did I want to see Rupert and Tucker and Sean squirming? Absolutely. Do I think that Fox will settle also with Smartmatic? I do. They will avoid this. They do not want to see. They don't. The most important thing they don't want to have is their own audience watching the fake carnival that Fox is exposed on in a court of law. They don't want their audience to see that. They're desperate to hold on to them. You can see this is why they've turned back to Trump. You can see this is why the culture war stuff is ratcheted through the roof. You can see why they're in the accelerationist mode on the culture war stuff, because now it's not just we're worried about child trafficking and groomers and pedophiles. Now it's, well, obviously all these LGBTQ people are coming to kill us, which has been a theme on Tucker for the last several weeks now. So they're going to ratchet that stuff as fast and as much as they can. They want to grab that audience back that they lost over the last year because they've been off of Trump. They want to empower Trump to win again. I mean, let's ratchet the thing back one more step. Why Rupert settled. He needs the propaganda machine blasting 100% of the time, no distractions, no bullshit for Donald Trump now. He needs to have the authoritarian movement win its great victory before he dies, so that Fox is never again going to have to worry about this, so that they will never again have accountability. They will never again have anything on their air ever. No one, no matter what lie they tell, no one will ever be able to hold them to account. Because if Trump wins, it will be an era where they will call themselves news, but they will be state television.
So, Joe,
And that's why, again, to go back, folks, I know it's disappointing. Saddle the fuck up. We've got to go fight them, and we've got to beat them so catastrophically at the ballot box, so unbelievably badly at the ballot box, that Fox is reduced to their war on Christmas horseshit again, and not serving as the arm of an authoritarian political party that seeks to destroy the United States of America.
all right, and I want to come back to Trump in 24, but Joe, I want to ask a little bit about the economics of political media, because on the right, MAGA, whatever you want to call it, there's no shortage of it. Fox, OANN, Rumble, Tumblr, Truth Social,
Right.
Sinclair, Salem. Now, there have been a few times, you think about the passive Air America, MSNBC is still out there, but there's no sort of corresponding, I guess we would call it pro-democracy, but there's no counter-programming. I mean, we are, right? But there's been no real investment in sort of I mean, maybe this is what the mainstream media is supposed to do, right? Or we thought they would do.
Yeah.
There's no corresponding investment to counter-program this stuff at a truly even level.
No, not at all. I mean, this has been going. They have been spending billions of dollars. Murdoch, all of them. I mean, the Koch brothers, spending billions of dollars over 30, 40, 50 years to build this outrage machine that they created, a lie machine. And there is no other like thing for the pro-democracy side of things. The mainstream media continues to do both side stuff. And that's, again, one of the reasons Resolute Square was founded, was to like
Yep.
start, because we can't wait for, for the billionaires to come in and fund the truth side of this stuff.
Right.
They want their tax cuts. They want the stuff that they want, and they want to they want to use the fear and anger that Fox and everybody can foment to build to build their coalition to take the country out. And that's what they're doing. And there is nothing to balance that or to take it on. One of the things, I had Tom Etzel on that Trippy show, my
That's a
podcast.
great podcast. That was a
Yeah, it
great
really is
Good.
worth a listen, folks.
And
Yeah.
he had a great idea. I think he said, look, there's only one power right now, source that the Democrats or the pro democracy side has. That's the U.S. Senate. That's that slim majority in the U.S. Senate. Hold hearings, hold democracy hearings, hold media, democracy and media hearings. Haul Murdoch in there. I mean,
Yes,
get these
yes,
guys
yes, Joe.
and
Yes.
and
Put
and
that fucking guy
Kennedy
in front of
and
the
Sean,
cameras.
and get them there, put them in front of the cameras like they did with tobacco, back in the day,
Sure.
and hold hearings and expose what the threat to democracy is and force everybody to cover it. Fox won't, but there's, I think, I mean, when he said it to me, I was like, yeah, this is like one concrete thing we can all demand of our senators, to start to hold these hearings on democracy, the media, and what the threat is to the country right now.
Man,
But Joe, let me ask, hold on, Rick, 1 second, because Joe, this is the one thing, with the exception of last summer, with the January 6th committee, Democrats in Washington they got hay fever when it comes to spectacle. And
Yeah.
they always seem to leave out that it's such a key component of politics of any time, but certainly of the modern age, when, again, it's going to get covered. You have Rupert, Lachlan, all of them sitting behind those tables, right? Let the right go crazy, right? Let them go
yeah.
bananas.
Listen, let them bitch and moan. Oh, how dare you, free press. These are people who will literally be the first ones who cheer when the Trump administration of the future shutters the New York Times because they're not sufficiently patriotic.
If Facebook is a publisher, if Google is a publisher, if Twitter is a publisher, right? Fox is a publisher. How come they don't follow the same rules?
Yeah, no, that's the whole point, is to drag them in there and hold the hearings and make them public televised hearings. And you're right, Reed. I keep saying, all last cycle they keep doing the crazy, we keep doing the work. Okay, spectacle is part of the work, because that's what you have to get people's attention. You have to make sure. I mean, we all know that, Fox is not going to report any of this. No one in the Fox, silo is going to know this even happened. I was having a beer with a good friend of mine last night, who's totally trumped out, been trumped out for years, but we still have a good relationship and talk. And he had no clue about the Dominion lawsuit. I was like, well,
Yep.
we got to see how this one turns out. He goes, what are you talking about? I haven't been following that at all. So I think we have to bring it to the fore. They're not going to have to apologize because of the way this was settled. That's fine. I get what Stewart was saying. I agree that, look, they had a responsibility to get what they could get, and they did a hell of a lot for the country by just bringing this case, getting the depositions out there and putting it out there. But now we have to keep the fire on. And I think Tom Etzel might be right. The way to do it would be Senate hearings, televised national hearings on democracy, the media. Call these guys in.
Well, look, I mean, if the House Republicans have founded the committee on, what threats to the deep state or whatever the hell they've called it, there's no reason why you couldn't have something else. All right. So Stu, let's look forward a little bit. I want to talk about Trump because, he's now in a shooting war, metaphorically speaking, with Ron DeSantis. And I think Ron DeSantis is going to lose that for a variety of reasons. But I think the one thing, too, that we shouldn't underestimate, and today was a wake-up call for me, is that we shouldn't and cannot underestimate what the next 18 months are going to be. this is going to be, from my perspective, going to be a much tougher race. He's got a much smarter team around him, as Rick noted earlier today. You know, they're gobbling up Republican members of Congress in Florida to endorse Trump right in DeSantis's face. They got another guy out of Texas who said, "I had a great meeting with Ron DeSantis, and therefore I'm going to endorse Donald Trump." So it sure seems like they're doing a pretty, good job of also solidifying, elected officials, the base, everybody else.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a critical thing that we have to that people have to go through, and I think we can help this, and that is imagining the unimaginable. Because ultimately, at some point, the unimaginable is going to become inevitable if we don't intervene. And it is unimaginable, I think, to a lot of people that Donald Trump could be reelected. But I haven't seen a poll where Biden's beating him. And I think that Trump is a crafty animal. I think that he has assembled a better team. I think that DeSantis, in many ways, is helping Trump. This is a point that Ryan Wiggins, who works for the Lincoln Project, was making earlier today, which I hadn't thought about, that when DeSantis goes out and attacks the happiness company, right? I mean, does this, so you have Lloyd Blanken, who's out there attacking DeSantis and saying, like, thank God he doesn't have the nuclear button.
The former CEO of Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is, I mean, so does that make Donald Trump look more reasonable? I mean, say what you will about Donald Trump, he never got in a fight with Mickey Mouse. I mean, like, how stupid do you have to be?
Well,
and is there something happening here so that Trump is going to end up benefiting from this primary, not come out of it diminished?
The man was born with a golden horseshoe up his ass, so I would probably say you're right. Rick, go ahead.
As my grandmother would say, he has the devil's luck. And the thing about Trump at the moment, and again, Reed, to go with what you were a little bit off of what you were saying, he has assembled a much better team. People, you've got to be realistic about it. It's not Corey Lewandowski, who he pulled out of a fucking bar in a hotel in New Hampshire. It's not dipshit Brad Parscale drunk off his ass, falling
stealing right and left.
It's not the Joker squad of Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller front and center anymore. Now they are political campaign professionals. I would recommend to you guys go look up an article in the New York Times today about Susie Wiles, Wiles. She was DeSantis' campaign manager. He threw her over. She's now with Trump. Hyper competent. Chris LaCivita working for Trump. He's the Swift boat guy. Hyper competent. We know these two people. They are not jokers. We are taking it very seriously how much better his team is this time. And you should too. You know how they're getting all these members of Congress in Florida to endorse Donald Trump? They've been running a call program to their donors saying, hey, the former president would like to speak to you at the end of the day today. And between the time of that morning call and the end of the day, they get a call from every single one of their local donors and their county party chairman and everybody else saying, hey, I'm going to be with Trump. You better be with Trump. This is organized, people. Do not confuse. Look, Trump used to be like a spree serial killer where you go randomly like slaughter people. Now he's like a methodical serial killer. They're both serial killers. Be careful. Don't take it lightly. And I think DeSantis this week, I mean, look, he was already in a fight with Disney. They had already like pulled his pants down and spanked his ass once. And the stuff he is doing this week, even more than the 6-week abortion ban, has led major donors to go, oh, this fucking guy is not ready. He is not ready for prime time. He is not ready for the big show. He lacks emotional discipline and control. He lacks judgment. He's in a stupid fight that he can't win in the end of the day. And again, with a company a private company that does a lot of good in the state of Florida, that he's trying to torture and punish them because they wouldn't agree to join him in saying, don't say gay. Bad look, bad day. and I mean, my phone is blowing up tonight about how many Republicans in Florida are now racing each other to get on the Trump bandwagon again. He's managed to get one member of Congress, a woman named Laurel Lee, who used to work for him as Secretary of State. I elected her husband to the state Senate a jillion years ago, and that's one. And the other 23 or whatever it is appear to have either broken for Trump or are breaking toward Trump.
Yeah, and Joe, I mean, I guess this is like, if we're to use a little bit, to use a medical metaphor, I guess this is like, just because you think you beat the infection the first time, make sure you take all the penicillin, right? That's why they tell you to take the whole course, because if you don't, it can come back. And I think we see that.
Yeah, no, look, we've all talked about this. Trump is going to be the nominee, and again, because there are no consequences, and the MAGA crowd are going to stick with him no matter what. You keep seeing poll after poll saying, "Hey, it's going to be still a dead heat, and will be." We cannot let up. We can't discount, his ability to not only win the nomination, which he will, but to be a real threat again to the nation and to winning in 2024. That is not crazy. We have to keep doing the work. We got to. I just think again, we have to keep building every wedge, every fight. The DeSantis Trump fight, great. Keep stoking it. The one that's really confusing to me, though, is Sununu, and I was hoping one of you could let me in on what you think is going on in Sununu again.
What do you mean? How so?
Well, because he was down wherever they were doing some GOP donor thing, and then
Nashville.
He was in
Yeah.
Nashville, and then he was on some show, I think this morning or
Yeah.
today, talking about, maybe it was CNN, talking about, the Republicans have a good product to sell, but we just have to stop being crazy. And if we stop being crazy, and get back to individual liberty and yada, yada, yada. So it looks like he's trying to, have a second bite at the apple here, Stuart, getting out of the starting blocks as far as
This would be his
campaign.
dad. I mean, my take on it, I used to spend a lot of time with that family.
Yeah, because his dad was
who
good
was
at
a
politics.
brilliant, interesting,
Yeah.
strange man, is probably encouraging him to do this. But, what I would ask is, what is that product? You have Ron DeSantis running for president of the United States. Has he put out one policy plan? Except that
he doesn't want. He wants to. If a woman gets raped or a victim of incest, he wants her to have bring the paperwork from
bring the paperwork to prove it
to two separate doctors. That's his plan.
Yeah, and that
Doesn't like gays.
Genocide is territorial dispute, but there's no big ideas here. There's nothing. The same thing that happened in 22.
Well,
what do you get? And I mean, so Sununu's the governor in a state where the governor has almost no power. That's the way that they designed the whole thing. You literally have to get a committee to spend more than $5,000, right?
And every neighborhood has its own state rep.
Yeah, Stephen Merrill, who's a client of mine, was governor, and he tells the story of he was walking around in Manchester, the capital. He was talking to a woman, and he says, like, everybody seems to know you here. Why? And Steve's kind of, a very modest guy, and he goes, well, that's because I'm governor. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm from Hooksett. I didn't know that.
I'm from the seacoast. I don't, you don't come over here, so I don't know you. Right.
So, I mean, being governor of New Hampshire is not, to be equated being a king, as Ron DeSantis seems to think. But there are a few governors out there. Larry Hogan, Charlie Baker was one.
Jim Douglas,
Scott in Vermont. Your former client, Rick.
Jim Douglas.
But Sununu was on the air this morning talking about how the party, we've got these great things that we can sell, and one of the things is we have to own homelessness. And I'm sitting there like, what? Like,
well, I actually want to break some news.
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Can I break some news? Trump just put out a video.
Yes.
Today, where he says he will outlaw homelessness and arrest everyone who refuses to comply. He will then give them the option to get out of jail or be relocated to new tent cities where he will, quote, take care of their needs. And if people can't, if nothing else fucking horrifies people, sending people to camps has a bad historical fucking precedent.
Well, he's already done it once, so this
Yeah.
is just he's just going to do it better
Yeah.
this time.
Perhaps work will make them free at these camps or something. I don't know. I mean, it's insane.
But
And
to that
infuriating.
insanity, Stuart, whether or not it was the governor of your home state, extolling the virtues of the Confederacy last week, or in southeastern Oklahoma, the audio tape of a bunch of county
Yeah.
officials, ruining the fact that that they can't take those people down to Mud Creek and string them up from a tree anymore. And now Governor Kevin Stitt of the state of Oklahoma said that kind of language has no business here, and I'm glad he did that. But crickets from everybody else.
Well,
Yeah, look, I think that parties have a personality, the same way baseball teams do, sporting teams do. Something happens, there's a collective personality that evolves. So you can say in the Reagan era, with some of it, a lot of it manufactured, but there was a personality that was sort of big, optimistic, expansive. I'm going to announce in front of the Statue of Liberty, I am going to embrace the idea of America as a country of immigrants. And George Bush, before he became a wartime president, had an optimistic personality. That was the essence of what it was. I wrote a book about it, and I called Adventures with the Cockeyed Optimist from Texas. So what is a personality now of the Republican Party? It's a very mean-spirited, angry, aggrieved. You never see these people smiling. Personality. I mean, that is the essence of what the party is. So, and when you have other figures that they could turn to, Sununu's a normal human being, or Hogan or something, they can't even pick their own state party chairman. So, I mean, they're not
and
going to
guys,
get
what do you
a
think? How do you think
nomination.
Sununu comes out of? I think the guy's entire predicate is he's going to win his home state. I think the guy comes in third or fourth
Well,
in today's GOP.
the problem is like I've said till I'm
Probably
blue in the
right.
face, is that they're all conventional, which is when he got asked, well, if Trump's the nominee, will you support him? And he started tap dancing around. He sort of said, well, things are sometimes crazy, but we're all one big family. So and that's the Larry Hogan problem too, right? Which is, if you're gonna be the true alternative, then you got to be the true alternative, and none of these guys are willing to do that.
You have to go out and you have to say, I am the cure to the sickness. And to do that, you have to say that the party's sick. And, that's probably not a good way to get elected, to say, go out there and tell people you're lost your mind, you're sick. But it's a necessary step to get there so somebody could go out there and do it. And there's really nobody. Asa Hutchinson would be the closest thing to somebody who's out there doing it.
Well, and Chris Christie's
And
out
I
there
don't
doing it
know.
now, right? So,
Yeah, I don't know how this changes except to defeat these people. And it's not going to take one defeat. I think that they're better off after 22 than they were before. Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's been elevated. Everybody that was for the insurrection has been elevated. Everyone who was for democracy in that party has been punished.
Mm-hmm.
So could it have been worse? Yeah. But are they better off today than they were before 22? Yeah, they are. And that's how it happens. It happens incrementally. And I don't see any reason to believe that their optimism that they're going to win is unfounded. It's a fight.
It's a fight. They love to fight. And I think, Rick, this is the one thing about bad guys, whether or not it's in politics, in fiction, in movies, whatever it is that bad guys are always willing to do anything.
Sure.
Right?
And they like to fight. That's a really good point, Reed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of us
Well,
like to go about living a normal life.
Right.
I mean, this is one of those. This is one of those sort of tropes of politics now. Is evil never sleeps, y'all. The bad guys are all. I mean, Steve Bannon in a jail cell is working to overthrow democracy. Steve Bannon, when he's in the shower in the morning, is thinking about how to overthrow democracy.
Thank you for that image, by the way.
Steve, well,
So that's one day a month.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Right. And that's court
Stephen
mandated.
Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, when he's eating his mice in the morning,
Yeah, when he hangs from that underneath that bridge every night.
when he's having his mice in the morning,
Right.
he's thinking about how do you put immigrant kids in cages again.
Yes.
These people never stop, and it's one of the things about the length of this fight. They're counting on wearing everybody else down. They're counting on wearing down everybody else. And look, I saw it happen in the Republican Party. You guys saw it happen when it started in 15 and 16. There was a belief that he would definitely lose and everything would go back to normal.
Yeah.
But the transition of people who were like, I'm tired of fighting. I'm just going to say, okay, I'll put on the red hat and I'll be done. And I won't really believe it, but I'll pretend it'll be okay. I've got to keep the mortgage paid, blah, blah, blah.
I've got a business to run, Rick.
I got kids. I got a business to run. I got kids in college, all this bullshit. And every one of those things, every single one of those things was a lie to themselves. But it was a lie that came because they were just too tired and chicken shit to fight anymore.
But Joe, that's also the easier path, right?
Yeah, well,
just lay back in the river and let it carry you down.
Exhaustion is always the tactic of the authoritarian, and they count. And that's why we can't get exhausted. We have to keep the fight up, and we have to keep exposing it. Again, I think going back to the Senate hearings, things like that, the class action suits, anything that we can to just keep driving, and keep the attack up is what we have to do.
And the thing is, the thing that we know about that too, Joe, is that, we've always said, we have to, as Nichols said, right, make sure that everybody knows about this all the time.
Right.
But also that when you do things like that, they always over-rotate on the crazy, if such a thing is possible for them.
Yeah.
So they always illustrate even further for otherwise normal human beings. Wait, I don't want these people anywhere near me. But that again requires that once in a while, you lace up the boxing gloves and you start throwing a few punches.
Well, also I think part of the crazy now is it's starting to expose the danger in a far more open way. I mean, the way DeSantis is doing what he's doing, Trump, all of it, and I think the impact now of Fox is getting wider. The danger of Fox is becoming clearer and clearer. So I think, before we had them doing the crazy, us doing the work. I think now we have to continue to expose what they're doing. They're doing some of the work for us. They're exposing how dangerous they are and what their real desire to take out the country, to take out democracy is becoming clearer and clearer. That's the thing. I continue to say that contrast between just calm, trying to get it done. That's, Biden and folks like that got to do that, but we've got to keep doing the work of fighting it aggressively and exposing.
Well, and we cannot do it without you guys. Okay, before we let everybody get back to their evenings, Rick Wilson, host of the Enemies podcast, author of Running with the Devil. Rick, what are you seeing?
Look, I am keeping an eye on the DeSantis question right now. It is getting very close to the point where the money that Jeff Rowe is starting to burn by running ads for him has begun that process you predicted. And their burn rate right in the last week has probably been somewhere around $2 million of all the things they're starting to try to pull off. And they're hiring people left and right. That stuff they will be shocked how fast that $100 million goes away. They will be shocked, especially because the major donors are now getting very nervous. They're starting to pull back. They're starting to get worried. And some of them are going to ask for their money back. One of them has pulled away already and says, I'm not going to do I'm not going to give you the $2 million I committed to because you're crazy on abortion. He's very close to another one who's given even more. I think you're going to see that DeSantis in contempt for his own major donors is going to bite him hard in the immediate future. I also think we're going to end up seeing the Trump operational campaign getting into even higher gear. And the rest of these cats and dogs that are out there, Pence and Haley and the rest of them. I think they're headed downhill fast. The other thing I'm watching is wait for the next shoe to drop with Disney. They're not done with this fight at all.
All right, Joe, host of That Trippy Show. How about you? Any last thoughts?
Look, I'm really looking at June, early July. I think the whole Republican side could be over by then. I'm really interested in
Yep.
just seeing like whether anybody really actually gets in and can pull off actually a challenge that makes any sense, because I just don't see that happening. And the other thing to keep an eye on, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it that much on this on this show, this episode, but no labels and the effort out there to put on a third party candidate, which is only going to help Trump. That's got to get nipped in the crib before it gets out. And that's something I'm really anxious about, want to watch and continue to fight.
Can I
Rick, go
talk
ahead.
about that for 1 second? Over the weekend, folks, you've heard us talk a lot about no labels lately because they have a plan to reelect Donald Trump. That's what it is. They can call it whatever
Exactly.
they want to. It's a plan to reelect Donald Trump. Over the weekend, I got a call from a reporter who said, "Hey, have you heard of an extreme dark money group called No Principles to go up against No Labels?" And I said, "I have not. I have nothing to do with it. I haven't heard about it. I haven't talked to anybody about it. I don't know anything about it." Well, No Labels this week sent out an email yesterday. This week, it's Tuesday. On Monday, No Labels sent out an email claiming I was running it alongside Matt Bennett, our friend from Third Way. This is, of course, as we say in the political business, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's a flaming bucket of horse shit. And it's Nancy Jacobson and Mark Penn lying very directly, and the people that they got to sign the letter lying very directly, people with very close ties to Trump, by the by. And this is something that they are about to learn, that truth, much like Dominion, if you lie about people, you're going to have to face the consequences. So I would like to say the No Labels tonight. Good, nice try, Nancy. But now you've left the friendly village of fucking around, and the next on ramp is finding out.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, on that note, Stuart, how about you?
I'm much more boring. I was thinking about the Supreme Court. I just think that the destruction of faith in the court is so debilitating. It's at its lowest level before the Thomas stuff. In the Gallup polling, the respect for the court was at its lowest level. And how much is it going to plummet now? So hopefully, again, what Joe's saying about Senate hearings, they should have Senate hearings on Thomas. I mean, the idea that you get on some billionaire's plane and he flies you around and takes you on vacations, that's what, model mistresses do for billionaires, not what Supreme Court justices should do. And, Thomas is a liar. It's clear that he's lying. And what does that do to the sort of structure of any belief of a last bastion of something that we can collectively agree on? So, I think that alone in itself is a crisis in democracy.
Right. Well, and just to wrap up here, gang, I hope you will check out the Lincoln Project podcast, up twice a week. Rick will be coming up on, I think, our next episode tomorrow or the next day. Listen, I just want to close with the idea of, the marathon, not the sprint piece of this, which is when you're tired, you rest, you don't quit.
Right.
And so if you need to rest, get some sleep, get some exercise, eat right. But get back to it, because, guys, it's going to take every single one of us every single day between now and November of 2024. And I know it seems like a long way away, but as Joe said, guys, the general election could start as early as June. And I would also like to say, just as an aside, Rick, to something you said about campaign finance, I would like to give the Nikki Haley campaign the Bum Steer Award for lying about their own campaign finances.
Oh,
Saying
yeah.
they raised $11 million only by double counting literally every dollar they raised, and actually having $5.5 million, or having raised $5.5 million. I don't know how much they have, but to the cash register thing, that was good. That was their best quarter. It ain't going to get better from there. And I think you see, to your point, guys like Mike Pompeo said it ain't going to happen.
Right.
Pence gets booed at NRA. He might just decide it's not going to happen. And some of these guys, they're out of sequence, and it might not ever be their time. But look, that's been the problem for candidates time immemorial. So everybody, listen, I want to spending time with us this evening. We will see you next week. Until then, thanks everybody. Rick, Joe, Stu. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. Take care.